Hi, my name is Kadeja. I'm a creative humanitarian and a freedom fighter. Welcome back to the Liberators channel. In this particular video, I want to talk about the power of words and symbolism. So I mentioned I'm a creative. I love to write music, and in my experience as a targeted individual, the best way for me, the easiest way that I've been transmuting the energy of being exploited, being dehumanized, being mistreated is through my music. So with that being said, when I had my first psych ward visit back in 2019, I wrote a lot of music because I knew that medication wasn't something that I needed. I wasn't schizophrenic, I wasn't anxious, I wasn't depressed. I was being tortured and dehumanized. And my second psych ward visit, which took place in August of 2022, I did the same thing. Not lyrics, I didn't write lyrics, but I would still express myself in an artistic way to transmute this energy. And as the saying goes, art imitates life. So I'm just going to dive deeper into how what was initially going to serve me as my liberation, being my music, being my art, it had turned into a form of bondage by way of black magic and occult involvement. If you're not into the spiritual world or the spiritual realm, you may not fully understand what I'm getting at, but I'll try to be as clear and descriptive as I can. So August of 2022, I went to the psych ward, but I knew that I would be met with people who would gang stalk me. I knew I would be met with people who would try to exploit my mind. And although I was going to get help, right, I was going to get psychological help, there would be people there to gang stalk me and play even more psychological games in the midst of me trying to get to the bottom of the psychological issues I was dealing with, right? It's like a game that they play. So why did I even go to the psych ward if I knew I'd be met with this? Well, I really needed to see a psychiatrist, and unfortunately, I had been waiting months. And even when I would go to the hospital, they would tell me, well, if you get admitted, you could see a psychiatrist within a matter of days. But of course, if I become admitted, now that has to be on my record that I was admitted into this psych ward. And I had gotten tired of waiting months to see a psychiatrist. I'm needing help, and there were no alternative programs or wellness retreats, and unfortunately the quality of care that you get is as good as your health insurance. So I didn't have many options. So I said, you know what? Although they're going to fuck with me once I get admitted into the psych ward, I need to see a psychiatrist. I need to tell them what's going on, and I want to qualify for assistance because every job that I go to, I'm subjected to psychological warfare. And the fact that I was poisoned a couple years ago made it even more difficult for me to maintain work. So to dive deeper into what I said about words and symbols holding power, I say in 2020, I wrote a lot of music, like a large bulk of music. And typically I write in hopes of someday pitching music, but I was writing a lot of personal content that reflected my personal experience. As a result of being poisoned in 2020 of February, my vision was being affected. This is not my natural eye color. My hearing was being affected, and I was also getting voices in my head via V2K. Now, I talked about these things in my music. Blurry vision, trouble hearing, and even when I had that second visit to the psych ward, a white woman named Sarah had to point out that this would later be an issue for me. So she was not only exploiting me mentally, but telling me how my body would degenerate. And so I talked about these things in my music because a psychiatrist told me I was schizophrenic. And my family, unfortunately, as a result of what I was going through, they didn't know how to help me. They would just refer me to the places that were dehumanizing me even more. So I said, talked about deafness, I talked about blindness, I talked about V2K voices in my head. And later that year, as I mentioned, this took place, that second psych ward visit in August of 2022. Something else I want to mention, during this period of time, I drew a lot of images. I drew a lot of images that reflected what was happening to me at this psych ward. Symbols on my forehead, symbols on my eyes, and even my mouth being zipped shut, things happening to my mouth. Not because I wanted these things to manifest, but I was already experiencing a version of this. XO, 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 1010 binary codes on the forehead representing how this technology is trying to interface with my natural biology. I was reflecting what was happening to me, in a sense, raging against a machine, not only through lyrics but symbolism as well. In retrospect, I do not regret doing these things. I was doing the best I can to cope with trauma and torment as a targeted individual, and for me, it's through artistry. So with that being said, let's fast forward, okay? So this took place in August of 2022. And as the months progressed, I would write even more music reflecting my experience. And in November and December in particular, I experienced so much. There was so much paranormal activity taking place in my life because I was upon a spiritual awakening. I did not know it at the time. I never heard of a past life regression, which I would later experience. And even when I had that experience, I didn't know whether it was real or fake. Is it a dream? Is it a fantasy? Or is it my actual soul coming back upon my spiritual awakening? So go to November of 2022. I kept having these premonitions. You will fall madly in love with somebody and it will end in tragedy. Now, I had no idea what that meant. And I had no idea that that would be used in reference to brain science and romantic involvement. Another premonition that I had during the month of February of 2022 is that I would eat my words somehow. I didn't know what this meant, but the thought kept coming up and I had no context to it. The lyrics had already been written, talking about deafness, blindness, the V2K voices, and these things were not my fault. I was being exploited and tormented. And the images that I had drew were already drawn, so I can't undo this, right? So just follow me here. I have these premonitions. You'll fall in love with somebody. It'll end in tragedy. The words that you say, you will eat them. Another premonition that I had is that my work would be perverted in a way that would sexually distort them. Now, obviously, thinking these things, where do I put this? Is this a joke? Is it real? Is it fake? As a younger girl, I had experienced premonitions as well. But the fact that I was under hypnosis made it difficult for me to even actualize these thoughts. Why am I thinking these thoughts? I was under hypnosis. I had more and more voices in my head as a result of V2K. I was getting hit in my head, psychotronic weaponry. I was getting hit in my head. My vaginal area was being stimulated. All of these things taking place, so many distractions. And in the midst of these distractions, I'm getting premonitions that I don't know if I should identify as fairy tales or warning signs. Now, with this being said, in late November, these premonitions and thoughts were becoming stronger and stronger, like existing on the cusp of extraterrestrial intelligence and artificial intelligence. The reason I say that is because I was getting guidance, spiritual guidance, but I was also being exploited with artificial intelligence. As I mentioned, there was black magic on me. As I mentioned, My body was being exploited physically, as I mentioned. I was getting all of these thought inserts of what to do, record, do this, don't do that, do this, stop, go, no, don't. And what I had drew at that psych ward, it was as if it was starting to manifest. I drew arrows up, down, left, right. And when I get these thoughts via V2K, that's what it feels like. It was stop, go, left, right, make this turn, make that turn, stop, XO, XO, psychological warfare, suicidal idealization, like a and I had drew this because I was already experiencing this for the past 4 years of my life, and those images only served as a representation of what was taking place. But those images, or images in general, hold power as well as words do. And I did not know that these things would get worse. And so what was initially going to serve as my liberation became a form of bondage. And I'm going to go deeper into detail on what I mean by that. So my spiritual awakening took place in early December. And there was an image of a woman, like a mirror reflection of me, dressed in this 90s attire. And she said, "These images hold power. Do you know what you've done? These words have power. There are people who come back for their karma." And even, remember I mentioned I had a premonition that my work would be exploited or exploited, right? My work would be exploited. It's because, well, I got poisoned a second time. Because one day I felt like I was dying and I didn't know what to do. None of my family members are healers. I can't call on them. All of these contacts in my phone, what would happen if something really happened to me? I can't rely on them. And so I went to the emergency room where they loaded my body with even more biotech, nanobots. And unfortunately, I'm in a process where I'm trying to purge as much out of my body as I can. But even after that happened, I woke up to people saying, detox, detox, detox. What would happen to you? They say via V2K, what would happen to you if you went blind or you went deaf? But the white woman at the psych ward was already mocking me for probably having hearing issues before I even uttered these words. People were mocking me for having vision changes, primarily white people, a part of this conglomerate, targeting innocent people who are in reality probably revolutionaries in the field of science, in the field of activism, in the field of artistry, but they deem us as terrorists as a result of their own terror and fear. And so more about this awakening. What was initially going to serve as my liberation became a temporal form of bondage. In the midst of all of this taking place, I would get these visuals of black men holding clocks. I didn't know what this meant. I didn't know I was upon a spiritual awakening, but it was as if they were rushing me. You need to record, you need to get started. Something's about to happen. They kept referring to a clock. What does this mean? I had no idea. I'm not from a spiritual family. I didn't know what I had to Google. What did a past life regression? I didn't know what that meant. And it's as if I feel like I missed out on something like an Aladdin ride. The best way to describe it, if I would have recorded earlier or put out this work earlier, I could have probably saved myself from what will later happen to me, a form of bondage. Is the best way to describe, like a timeline. Like a timeline is ending, right? Because your spiritual awakening, or rather my spiritual awakening, it serves as a reset. You're awake now. And for some people that may happen in their 30s, other people it may happen younger. My spiritual awakening took place at 26 years old, and it serves as a system reset. The fact that I didn't put out content or I didn't vocalize what was taking place to me, and there was spiritual guidance around me who could have helped me during that time. It was as if like a timeline had ended. And if I would have done the work, it would have catapulted me to a different timeline, different opportunities. I know this sounds confusing, but it's just a matter of like an Aladdin ride, like in a timeline ending and a new one beginning, right? The cycles of life, karmic cycles, life cycles. One cycle ended and a new one was beginning as a result of my awakening. But now I had to deal with all of this karma from the past. But if I would have spoken sooner, I wouldn't have to deal with that karma. And those images and those words wouldn't come to life like some Toy Story movie. Liberation and bondage. Now I say that because those words and images, I'm eventually going to share those images and share those words to give a better idea of what's taking place. But this is all spiritual warfare. No psychiatrist has been able to help me. It's my spirit. The only one I can rely on is me and my spirit. No doctor has been able to help me. And unfortunately, when I go to these spaces, not only do I not receive adequate help, but I'm further dehumanized in the midst of trying to get help for my psychological or body issues. Raging against a machine. I was doing that through my music and symbolism. Raging against a machine, dehumanizing me and exploiting my human rights. My human rights are being violated. My body is being exploited, and I was pushing like a resistance band. No, you're not going to dehumanize me. I will reflect these images. I will say these words. But unfortunately, it made matters worse. Now, I want to talk about the sexual distortion part. I talked about in my premonitions, I talked about the image, the symbolism, and eating my words, having a thought that would happen in the midst of all of this body exploitation. But my work being sexually exploited, what did that mean? So when I had my soul awakening, that the essence of me told me that a lot of my karma was related to mocking people for their sexual orientation. And it was as if this karma was either going to come up through my art or in some other way. I have to pay back this karma somehow. And so I began to have all these visuals of my work being exploited sexually. But it was linked to my karma and things that I have to undo from the past. I even got a visual of all the people from the past that I've upset, I've offended, I've disrespected, knowing the work that I have to do to undo it. And even my own soul told me, well, you could overcome it sooner than you think. And so I think, if anything, that was just a point towards karma and recognizing that if you don't pay back that karma through your own free will, the universe will make you eat it in one way or another. Whether it's, for me, it's my artistry, and the energy was pushing itself up in that area in the strangest way. I mean, I perceived it as strange, but it was a warning sign. These are the debts that you need to pay off. And so I'm sharing all of this because so many people are experiencing mind invasive tech. So many people are very gifted. And contrary to popular belief, although I don't know many, there probably are many people, due to their spiritual gifts and the divine mission that they carry, they're existing on the cusp of artificial and extraterrestrial intelligence, two sides fighting each other, while one side is trying to help you and another is trying to not only siphon energy and information out of you, but overtake your natural biology with the biotech and agents that they have. Words and symbols hold power. Be very mindful of what you speak over your life, even if it's a reflection of what already happened to you. Symbols hold power as well. And so I guess a lesson to myself in a journey towards transcendence is to speak love, light over me, onto me, into me. Not afraid to share what's happened, but that's really showed me how these things can come to life if you are not careful, especially when black magic and occult science is involved. I hope this message serves you. Peace, love, and light to you.